Hey guys, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about all the supplies that I use when I make my candles. A lot of these would be considered staples if you want to make your own candles at home. So yeah, let's get started. So I think in the very first part of this video, you probably saw I went ahead and got my jars and we had our wicks. And what I use for that is I use CD and Eco wicks. They're two different brands. We were testing wicks originally with these candle jar sizes. You'll want to do that yourself, but I have all my different size wicks for each candle jar size. So these are the, let me see, just want to make sure I'm right. These are the CD 12. They're 6-inch and they're pre-tabbed wick. And then we use these little wick stickers. And these are the Pro stickers from Candle Science. I like to use these. I used to use hot glue, which you can use hot glue. Hot glue is not gonna hurt anything. It was just more time consuming. And these are just little sticky tabs. I'll take one off, let me show you. But they're sticky on one side and it's kind of like a foam material. And then you just peel off the other side so that it sticks. One sticks to the wick, the other in the jar. So yeah, I find those like super easy, pretty quick. You saw the time lapse in the beginning, but it doesn't take too long now and it's not as hard as the hot glue gun. That took a while when I was first starting and now I just don't have the time for that. So we went to tabs. So yeah, so we have now our jars all pre-tabbed. And now is when I kind of stop and I've already decided how many of each scent I want to make, how many jars, which sizes, and I go through and I start doing math. This may look messy, but you want to have a notebook and you want to do your math. So when making candles, you do everything by weight. You can't really go by volume. Like this is an 8-ounce jar and it's 7.2 grams, or sorry, 7.2 ounces net weight once I'm done with it. And that legally has to be on your label, which we put on our warning label on the bottom. We have our grams and ounces that will go on the bottom. But that's just something to note. You know, if you're making an 8-ounce candle, you're not gonna use 8 ounces of wax, or you're not gonna use 8 ounces weight of wax. You're going to use a different weight. So the way that you're going to calculate that is basically you are going to use the vessel that you want to use. You are going to fill it to where you want with wax. So you want to just use your regular, I use 464 soy wax. You want to fill that with the wax that you're going to use, and then you're going to weigh it on a scale in grams. Grams I feel like is the easiest. You can use ounces, but sometimes it gets confusing. Because there's fluid ounces and regular ounces, and sometimes things will be listed incorrectly online. So it's just better to go by gram. And so you would weigh your candle with the wax in the jar, and then you would subtract your weight of just the jar to find out how many grams of wax you need per candle. And that's the best way that you can do it to figure out exactly what you're gonna need for each candle size. We did that when we first began. And now we have a pretty good system where I can just go into my Excel sheet and type in how many candles I want to make, and then it'll spit out the amount of wax I need. And then from there, I'll calculate my fragrance oil. So that's the next piece of this I'll go over. Fragrance oil is also done by weight. We're going to do everything by weight, just makes it simpler. No conversion issues or anything like that. Soy wax generally can hold up to 10% by weight of fragrance oil, but you do want to check with the supplier of your wax and just double check, see what they say about it. They're going to know more about that wax than what you might find from my videos or other videos that other people do on candle making. So for a lot of my candles, I do use 8.5% fragrance oil to wax as fairly strong. But it is going to depend on your fragrance oil, so that's where you're just going to have to test. Maybe make 3 of the same size candles, do 8%, 9%, 10%. If your 8% strong enough, maybe you can even go down. You can do 7%, 7.5% fragrance oil. But the way that you're going to calculate that is I actually have I use my iPad here for a lot while I'm making candles and my notes and stuff. I do the paper and I use my calculator on here. So for example, we're doing 4 8-ounce candles. And for that, I've already figured out that I need 760 grams of wax. So we're going to do the 760. And one of these that we're doing is called Sleigh Ride. It's one of our new Christmas scents. It's really good. It just smells kind of like a winter wonderland fragrance. We're going to need 8.5% fragrance oil. So I'm gonna do my 760 times 0.085. And that equals 64.6. Usually on these I can round a little bit, so I'll just do 65 grams of fragrance oil. And I'll go ahead, and I already actually have this written down, so I already have 65 grams of fragrance oil written in here. So that way when I go to make my candles, all I have to do at this point is I measure out my melted wax into I use Pyrex containers. These are amazing. My boyfriend bought these for me, and they're so great. They're easy to clean out after every fragrance. You're gonna use a scale. So I just have, hard to see. So I just have a basic kitchen scale that weighs in, you can do grams, ounces, pounds. So I'm gonna change my unit to grams since that's what we're working in. All right, so we're in grams. And so then what I would do is I would go and put my container on there that I'm going to be mixing my wax and my fragrance into. And I'm going to tare that so that it's all zeroed out, the weight of this. And then I'll go and I'll weigh out my wax. I'll weigh out the 760 grams of wax, and then I will tare it once more. And well, actually you don't even have to do that because I actually weigh my fragrance oil on a separate scale. This is super handy. This one's just, I think I got it on Amazon. It was maybe $12. It says weigh gram, and the most I think this one weighs up to is 100 grams. So if you're making a larger batch of candles, you may have to get a different kind of scale. But I use these little paper cups, and I will put that, okay, we're not gonna do that because I can't, it almost just fell. Anyway, so this will be on the table, and you'll do this and you'll tear it out so that's all zeroed. And then you'll pour your fragrance oil in here to the gram amount that you want. Now, when you start to get into individual grams, it's actually very small. I'm talking like a few drops of fragrance oil. So I actually I have these little droppers. These were originally for my fish tank. I bought them in bulk probably like a year ago on Amazon. So I can't even tell you how much I paid for these, but I don't think it was much. I think it was like $8 for like maybe 200 of these. Anyway, and you use these, they're one-time use because fragrance oil will get on things and get sticky, and it doesn't matter how much you try to wash it, it's going to stick to it, especially plastic. When you're trying to make your candles, always go with glass. It's probably the safest. Glass, plastic, wax. Try to stay away from, glass, paper, and wax. Don't use plastic. I have noticed the fragrance oils will break down plastic pretty quickly. Usually I don't use this long enough to where it starts making it sticky, but if you leave it in there, the plastic will literally start melting from the fragrance oil. So that's something to look out for too when you're making your candles, is use a dropper that you're just going to use it for a second, or you can use a glass dropper, but it may be hard to clean. So just keep that in mind too. I eventually want to go to a glass dropper to be a little more eco-friendly. But right now for time's sake, we're going to use plastic. Anyway, I measure that out and then I'll mix it in with my wax. I mix it in at 185 degrees. And I try not to stir it. The more you stir it and agitate it, the more you're going to get uneven surfaces in your candle. Different waxes are different, but with mine, it is a little finicky when it comes to stirring. So if I sit there and mix and mix and mix and mix, I'll find that I have more bubbles later and more tops that I have to go back and touch up with a heat gun. So it's actually a lot better if you just stir it. Maybe 5 seconds is what I do. And I stir with, let me find my little, I've got this little wooden skewer. I use this for everything. I do wipe it off between each one, but the fragrance really doesn't translate a whole lot, but I use this for all my candles to stir them. 5 seconds, done, and I let it sit. I actually use this. This is one of my favorite tools now I have. It's by Tech City, and it is a infrared thermometer. And I do my wax. I test the temperature of that. Like right now we're at 193. And so we're actually ready to go soon. So I never let my wax get over 200 degrees just to kind of protect it. But you do want it a little hotter than 185, because once you start pulling the wax out of the, I use a hot pot. When I start pulling it out of the hot pot and into my Pyrex container, it's going to cool down pretty quickly. And you want that fragrance oil to mix in at 185 and then cool down from there. So I'll do a little time lapse of how I do all of this, and yeah. All right, so now that we have poured our wax, this is for 4 of the 8-ounce jars, and this is for my 2 16-ounce jars that we're doing in the scent. Let me grab, oh, there's my dog, he's taking a nap. Here's my little thermometer. So I'm gonna test this one. So that's at 162, and this one, 175. So we are basically waiting on these to get down to 135. So I do try to pour around 135, maybe sometimes 140. I've even poured them lower than that, maybe 125. But the lower you pour your candles at, the less holes and bumps and all that you're gonna have. So while we're waiting for those to cool, I take my jars that already have the wicks in them, and I take a clothespin. Clothespins is like the easiest thing to use for these. And I put the wick through the middle and just try to center them. I really just eyeball it from the top. Like that's pretty centered, that one, this one. I have a new method that I want to try with some popsicle sticks, but we'll see. It involves gluing 2 together and making a little cross and then drilling a hole through the middle so that they're perfectly centered. Now this one's being a little finicky, so once we pour the wax, sometimes the wick becomes a little more malleable and you can move it where you need it. And you always want to check them after you pour. So these I need 2 clothespins, and I try to put it right through that little eye. It holds it in place a little better than anywhere else on these 2 together. So yeah, that's how I do these. You can buy things that hold your wicks in place. Personally, I think they're just a little overpriced, and clothespins were super easy and they get the job done. So now we wait. All right, so the wax for these is finally cool enough to pour. It's to 135, and I think the wax for these 2 will also be cooled down by the time we pour these 4. So I'll go ahead and get the wax and I'll show you how I pour my candles. This is the easy part. All right, so now that we have our wax, it's cooled down. I use a paper towel right here because sometimes it'll drip, and if you catch those drips, it won't drip in between each one. So that's just there for safety and to keep me from getting my hand very hot, because the wax is very hot in here still. 135 degrees is still really, really warm. So I'm gonna slowly pour. I've heard the slower you pour, the less imperfections you have. I haven't really noticed that with mine, but I do try to pour slowly just to be careful to not mess anything up. I fill right up to where the glass starts turning inward in each one of these. All right, so I go back and I just double check the centering of each of these wicks. That one's a little off. Let's try to get that about right there. This one's also right about there. These guys are good. And I was actually able to make one little candle out of it. So yeah, we're gonna start making some sampler packs, I think. I was talking to Doug about it today, and I think I wanna do some sample packs where you get like 3 cents of this size for $24.99. We're gonna probably start changing our site up this week to offer that. But yeah, so now we just wait on them to cool and make sure that the wicks don't move. Right, so we finally have our finished candles. They've been cooling pretty much all day today. You know, I went about my day and did other chores and stuff around the house while these cooled. I made a few different fragrances. So those will be coming out tonight. And that's, my boyfriend was teaching me how to play Pokemon the other night. We'll just ignore that for this right now though. Anyway, so from here, we'll just want to trim the wicks, but I'm actually going to do that tomorrow morning, so I'll leave that part out of the video. We do trim to about 1/4 of an inch. You can pretty much eyeball it. I'll cut one right now just to show you. About right there. You definitely don't want to start trimming until your candle is completely cooled, and I mean like not even warm on the outsides, because down in the inside it could still be very soft. And so trimming the wick there can kind of move it around, and you don't want to mess around with that. You can get bubbles or sinkholes. I actually have like one little imperfection here, a little sinkhole. And what we'll do is we'll take a heat gun and melt the wax there, and it'll sink down in there, and you'll start seeing bubbles come up, and it'll flatten out the surface. But yeah, so these are our final candles. I'm gonna let them set overnight to cure, and then tomorrow these guys are going to get trimmed, they'll get their labels, and then they'll be live on our website. So yeah, thank you guys for watching.